course, in a basic science program, no one talks about slavery. No one talks about race or anything like that. And I'm the only Black woman and I'm talking about those things. And so, of course, there were times where it was so uncomfortable. Literally, when I was giving that talk, somebody, this white man kept on interjecting, okay, well, why is this? Why is that? How is race correlated? So on and so forth. And I would say I like to public speak and I'm pretty good at public speaking. And literally after that talk, I just did not want to give talks anymore. I was feeling more self-conscious about speaking about those types of things in those spaces. And it wasn't until like I had an exam, my mom was like, why are you feeling so nervous? Like, this is something that you normally do. And I'm like, this happened. And I just felt so, I don't know, like my spirit was diminished a little bit. So yeah, have I experienced imposter syndrome? 100%.
Why do we get the itis after eating a large meal?
Okay, here are 4 household items that are dirtier than your toilet.
I'm Briana, a scientist, and welcome to my new segment, Science in the News, where I break down trending science topics to basic understanding in 60 seconds.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of 2 Decades Deep. I'm Taylor Howard and I'm with Briana Banks. I am so excited to be starting this podcast. This was 2 years in the making. Yes. And I think that I am going to start it with you. You are my pledge mom. We're both from the South Subs. Like, what a full circle.
Shout out the South Sub.
Yeah, math until I die, okay?
O Fields, if you know, you know.
I've actually never heard. Did you make that up?
Yeah.
You have to say I've never heard. It's okay. That counts.
Right.
But it's so cool to be with you in this capacity.
Yes.
Like, did you think we were ever going to get here?
It's been a long time in the making, but honestly, we've prayed for things like this. We've talked about this. So I'm just happy that I can be here in this moment to support you and support the pod.
But I'm really glad, like I said, that I get to start this podcast with you. Yay. You have such an amazing brand. You're such an amazing person. So
thank you.
And we're going to get into it, okay? But I'd love to know a little bit more about you, your background, and how you got to where you were today.
Okay. Well, hey. Well, we know each other, but 2 decades deep. Hello. I'm Briana. I'm a 5th year, so final year. I'm literally writing my dissertation as we speak, so that's kind of crazy. PhD candidate in cancer biology. I study at the University of Chicago, and my research is looking at the effects of stress during puberty on breast cancer development later on in adulthood. So essentially, and I think we'll get into it a little bit later, but how stress affects the way that your breasts develop during your early adolescence and how that causes you to get breast cancer later on in adulthood. Which is so crazy because when you think about it's really like a nuanced topic, thinking about the impact of like your chronic psychological stress on breast cancer. So I don't want to go off into a tangent. Obviously you can see that like that's something I'm really passionate about, but that's a little bit about what I'm studying. And then I guess about BB the scientist is like something that I came up with in COVID, October 2020. And it's just honestly trying to redefine what a scientist looks like. And we'll get a little bit more into the brand a little later. But yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. So I know you're from OF
Yep,
Fields.
that's me. If you know, you know.
So you said you're from OF Fields, Olympia Fields,
yes.
And then you went to the University of Illinois. Mm-hmm. And from my understanding, you weren't always going to take the PhD route, right? Mm-hmm. Can you just kind of walk us through that transition?
Yeah. So we went to the same high school. I went to U of I. Same college, twins, seriously. And then in college, I was an integrated biology major, chemistry minor on the pre-med track. So I think growing up, I was always really interested in biology, the way that things work, specifically within the body. And everyone would always say, you should be a medical doctor. Kind of like that was what my skill set would be the most useful towards. So I was always like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. I really wanted to be like a cardiothoracic surgeon. That was my thing. So then I did this this internship my junior year. I was in a surgery room, an operating room, and I saw somebody get their prostate removed. I literally passed out in the operating room. Like I was trying to open the door and I hit my head and I passed out, and it was kind of this big ordeal. There's this person on the operating table. I'm trying to get out of there, whatever. And I realized, okay, maybe being an actual physician isn't for me, but I'm still really interested in the sciences. I'm still interested in research, kind of the healthcare space. What could I do with that? So it's honestly crazy how God will put people in your life for certain things. It was somebody I had never talked to. Do you remember the vice chancellor? She worked at our school. Whatever. Shout out to her.
Not ringing a bell, but keep going.
She put me. And it's so random. I never met with the vice chancellor, but she was. I was like, I felt like I was in a quarter life crisis. I'm like, I have no idea what I want to do. My senior year, so you know how that pressure of like everybody's doing this, everybody's getting jobs.
Totally.
I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So then somebody was like, maybe you should get a PhD. And from my understanding, I'm like, that is not my thing. To be honest, it might be controversial. I don't like to write, which is kind of crazy. Like I'm writing a whole dissertation.
Right.
But back then I'm like, I don't like to write. Research is cool. I did chemistry, organic chemistry labs. I would used to fail my experiments and you'd literally be like to my lab partner, okay, why did this not work? So I just didn't really feel like I was equipped for a PhD, but he was kind of telling me, okay, about all the skill sets you learn, and kind of a PhD is learning on the job, I guess, in terms of like the research part. So I did a post-bac at UIC. So that was, gave me a gap year to really figure out, what does research look like? What does working in a lab full time look like? What are the graduate courses, so on and so forth. And then I realized, okay, I actually could do a PhD. You can do a lot with that degree. So yeah, and then I applied to schools that following year. So yeah, so it's very not linear. It was, a lot of different things that kind of took me to the PhD path.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So I know that you said that you were you passed out in the surgery room. You realized, like, wait, that may not be
on
for
my
me.
head. I'm like, nah.
Oh my gosh, you had some battle scars.
Literally, though, actually.
No. And then, like, it's crazy because I know you talked about, like, wait, what am I going to do with a PhD?
Yeah.
But can you just talk about that moment when you realized, okay, maybe this is not my route, the feelings that you had? Because it's almost in a way of grief of, like, of the dream that you were going to pursue your whole life. So can you just kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like my senior year was such a pivotal year. And it's kind of crazy. I'm kind of going through that again now that I'm finishing up my PhD. What am I going to do now? That inquiry. But back then it was something because I was doing a pre-med program. So I was surrounded by all pre-meds. The whole goal and incentive of the program was to be a medical doctor. So all of my peers were, getting into med school and, okay, I'm going to specialize in this and so on and so forth. So it was kind of a period of like, okay, I'm the only one that's kind of steering off or doing something different. So it's scary, you know what I mean? And I didn't really have that many people that did a PhD specifically in like the STEM program. I didn't know anybody that did a PhD in either like immunology or cancer biology or even like math or physics. I didn't know anybody to like speak with or talk to. So it was like a period of just being like overwhelmed, scared, and kind of, you just don't know the unknown. I would say that for sure. But I'm happy that I did it. And I was happy that I kind of used my resources. I literally was on LinkedIn creeping everybody like, okay, PhD, and hi, can I like talk to you for 15 minutes? Or can I get insight on what you're doing just to get a little bit more information about it? But it was kind of an uncharted path, I would say, pursuing that because I didn't know anybody that had previously done it.
Yeah. And so you said that you took a gap year.
Yes.
So within that gap year, I know that you said you were messaging people, trying to get more information, but what are things that you did during that time? And also, how did you cope with the fact that like, okay, I don't know exactly what I want to do? Like, how did you feel that time?
So my gap year, I actually moved back home. So like I said, we're from South Side, Fields. Not South Side, sorry. We'll literally get trashed.
No, literally, let us like
we'll get trashed. I know, not South Side, the South Suburbs, Fields, to be exact. Mm-hmm. So I moved back home during that time period, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but having that support system of my family was really, really helpful. And so I really just spent that time being intentional with spending family time, really intentional and like kind of getting to know myself. I feel like that's where I really like kind of like was able to get my own relationship with God, you know what I mean? And we can talk more about that.
You can talk about it now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like, that's where I really started journaling, because literally I remember there's a time when I was working out and then I was on my knees. I'm like, God, what are you trying to tell me? Like, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to be? Because I had no idea of like, if I wanted to, at one point I wanted to do a master's in public health. So I'm like, should I do an MPH? Should I do a PhD? And I was at such a crux and a crossroads of like, really figuring out what I'm passionate about and like what invigorates me and my purpose, Marcia. I literally always used to pray purpose, 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 to the point now if I think about it too much, I can honestly like start tearing up, because I remember just thinking about that. I think I still am in, of how to fulfill my purpose, but I think I just have such a clear idea now. So it's kind of crazy when you think about things that happened 5 years ago and like, or you're stressed out like right now I'm in a period of like kind of how I felt last and 5 years ago, my senior year, about like, okay, what am I supposed to do? What am I going to do with this degree? So on and so forth. But it's kind of crazy to think about how God really carried me back then. So why would he not, carry me through this? So I just think that going back to your original question, what I did during that time was really reform and have my own personal relationship with God, really tap into my family, and then also tap into my resources. I reached out to a lot of alumni that went to U of I, different people that went to UIC where I was doing my rotation, and just really, really, really trying to get my name out there, but then also get more information about, okay, what does a PhD look like and like what I could do with it, research areas, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that you had this vulnerable moment where you're like, what is my purpose? Where am I going? Because I do feel like when I graduated also from U of I, all my peers, they had jobs and everything lined up. I was like, dang, I'm going back home and I don't have a job and I don't know what I want to do. And you feel so isolated in those moments, even though obviously you know that other people are struggling and don't know what they want to do. It's still an isolated event. So it's really nice that in those moments though, like in the uncertainty, you're able to lean on God and lean on your support system. And ultimately, the more you were finding yourself, you were also finding your purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's really dope. And so let's walk me through your first. This is so crazy to hear you talk about all this. And let's talk about your first year as a PhD candidate. Can you just walk me through how was that? I know that a lot of people can get imposter syndrome getting into higher education. So can you just walk me through that process?
Yeah, for sure. So, it was a different adjustment. So I would say, first and foremost, the U Chicago system is a quarter system, and we're used to semesters. So I was literally like, oh, okay, we're gonna have kind of like a syllabus week, getting into the material. Boom, material right away. And I would say it was just a really highly competitive environment. Not saying that I wasn't necessarily used to it, but I guess I wasn't used to as cutthroat or competitive as it was. So that was an adjustment. But I would also say in terms of imposter syndrome, I was only Black. I still am, which is like, come on, y'all. It's been 5 years. The only Black person in my program within like the whole cancer biology program at the University of Chicago. The only Black girl that's here. And so one thing that I was always passionate about is like the basic science. So like the mechanisms behind cancer. So like what drives cancer growth, things like that, more mechanistic, but then also how can I pertain that or make that to, quoting Issa Rae, I'm rooting for everybody Black. You know what I mean? How can I make the science behind this disease help advance the understanding that's, affecting my community, marginalized communities, so on and so forth. And I think that was such a niche topic. No one else in my program, there was one lady who I'm really like my mentor, Dr. Funmi Olapati, who was looking into that, like the genetics behind triple negative breast cancer in African and African-American women. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. But none of the students were really interested in that. And so I remember having imposter syndrome, like, oh my goodness, what does that look like? How are people perceiving me? I literally remember it was one time I was giving a presentation my first year, and I was talking about, there's this paper that looked at, there's a specific allele that's found in women.
What's an allele?
I'm like, wait. I know. I'm like, what is an allele? So it has to do with like your DNA makeup And don't you know how it's like TGCA and like you map out what goes A to T and
It's coming back to me.
yeah. So there's okay, so all humans were like 99.9% identical, our DNA is, but we have something called polymorphisms, and that's what makes us have our differences. So it's like different alleles that would make, okay, Taylor will have like almond shaped eyes or something like that makes us look different. So there's a specific allele that was shown with women who came from West Africa, and it was showing that this allele it's called the Duffy Knoll allele. Yeah. That it was shown that women from West Africa possess this allele, but they also have higher rates of triple negative breast cancer. So it was just kind of going to like a genetic predisposition to triple negative breast cancer. So anyway, when I was giving that talk, I had to talk about some, uncomfortable things. I had to talk about like the transatlantic slave trade, because we're talking about where this allele was taken and how we could see it, in the US. Kind of, you have to go through the map of like, okay, this is where the whatever. And I had to talk about that. And of course, in a basic science program, no one talks about slavery. No one talks about race or anything like that. And I'm the only Black woman and I'm talking about those things. And so, of course, there were times where it was so uncomfortable. Literally, when I was giving that talk, somebody, this white man kept on interjecting, okay, well, why is this? Why is that? How is race correlated? So on and so forth. And I would say I like to public speak, and I'm pretty good at public speaking. And literally after that talk, I just did not want to give talks anymore. I was feeling more self-conscious about speaking about those types of things in those spaces. And it wasn't until like I had an exam, my mom was like, why are you feeling so nervous? Like, this is something that you normally do. And I'm like, this happened. And I just felt so, I don't know, like my spirit was diminished a little bit. So yeah, have I experienced imposter syndrome? 100%. Yeah.
And then in those moments, you talked about your mom helping you and kind of speaking life into you. I'm sure that just being in STEM and you said that you're still the only Black person in your field. What are some tangible things that you've done to cope with imposter syndrome?
That's really good. I have a therapist. I would say therapy, honestly. I started therapy my 2021. So maybe that was my second year. And I think having a third party to talk to definitely helps and, instill confidence. I would also say I had to learn to not compare myself to my classmates. The good thing about a PhD where it's not as much room for comparison is that once you're in your project, you're kind of on your own terms. So you're on your own timeline as well. So I kind of had to realize like, this is something that I'm passionate about. This is something that I'm good at. So I had to just become more tunnel vision focused on myself, my project, and not really comparing myself to other people. So I would also say, yes, I would say like, my therapist has been such a great person to help, be like, no, girl, you're that girl. You know what I mean? Having that support system. I think the best thing also with going to University of Chicago is I'm in Chicago. So all of my friends majority of my friends are here. My family's here. My boyfriend's here. So it's just like that sense of support that I would say that I've had and been able to garner to help me kind of overcome. And they're always there to remind me of who I am, and I feel like you really it's good to have that intrinsically, like, okay, I know who I am, but at times when you may falter, being able to have that support system to like really reinstill that in you,
Yeah. And it's really important. You keep talking about having a support system and also having like a life outside of your PhD program.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. I got my master's and I remember I was drowning and I felt like I didn't have time for myself. So I'd love to know, you're a PhD candidate. You've been doing this for the last 5 years. You're not new to this. You're true to this. And period. So, no, literally. And I'd love to know, permanent how student. Were you able to balance being in your program, thriving in your program, but also having a life outside of that?
Yeah. It took a while, to be honest. I think I really mastered not necessarily mastered it, because of course you falter. Sometimes you have that full balance, but I feel like I got a good grasp of balance maybe my third year. And so how I treat school is kind of like a job. So I treat it as, during the day, not necessarily 9 to 5, it's not that rigid, but more so like during the daytime, part of the night, I'm doing my research, experiments, so on and so forth. But after a certain time, I cut it off, and then I could come home and like be with my friends, or like I could go with my boyfriend and like go to dinner or something like that. I don't know. I feel like I can't perform to my 100% in school if I don't have some type of outlet or release or something to look forward to. So I've realized that about myself. Like I feel like I always need something to look forward to. So whether it's like, okay, on Thursday I'm going to dinner, or like, okay, I have this trip coming up, or okay, then it's like, okay, let me grind out for this next week. Let me grind out for these next couple days, because I know at the end of the week I'm going out to this party or this event, or I'm going on this trip or that. And I feel like that's what helps me have my optimal performance when I do have that something to look forward to, or just like an outlet. I've never been the type of person that's able to be really efficient with just working 100% and not having anything outside of that. And then I also realized it kind of helps me to just use other parts of my brain. So for another, we'll talk about BB. It's so funny. I talked. It's like, it's me, but I talk about her in like third person. That has been such a great outlet, I would say, in terms of kind of going back into that balance piece, because it's science, but it's using another part of my brain. Because like what people don't really realize about a PhD, it's such a niche specific topic in cancer biology. It's not like all cancer biology. It's like I had to learn about that my first year, but it's really into the like my project, which is looking at the effects of stress on cancer development. And so being able to do things that use other parts of my brain is just like exciting, and it helps to re-energize the part of my brain that's really focused on my project. I feel like that was a really convoluted
no, but I mean you said so many like facts, because like you really can't pour from an empty cup. And I think that in society there's this rat race grind, like no days off, no hours off, no
sleep.
Literally wake up, grind, work out, like you're always on the go. And so the fact that you're able to detach from your research, even if it's for like a couple hours, I really do believe that ultimately fuels you. So I appreciate you saying that, because I definitely struggle with this. We just talk about this. Yeah, like it's ridiculous. And so I appreciate it's like, no, I actually can put this down for a second. Yeah. But something that you mentioned was BB the scientist. Yeah. So you're using it, right? Brand yourself, girl. I'd love to know, where did that come about? Like what was the idea and the vision behind BB the scientist?
So super random. Okay, so don't you know on Twitter you'll see different informational videos sometimes? Yeah. Okay, so I was on Twitter during COVID, not much to do, and I saw this video about how a kangaroo gives birth, and kind of like about the inside and kind of like the pouch, and it was so random but so cool, because I'm like, oh my goodness, now that's a talking point. Now I know how a kangaroo gives birth. It's super random, right? But it made me think of the idea of like, wow, I feel like I left learning something. How would I be able to translate that, kind of to my peer group, but in ways that are things that I would want to know about? You know what I mean? So like, for example, I made a video about, okay, well, why do we get the itis? That's something that I've always wanted to know. So it's just like, okay, if I could be able to relate that information in layman, relatable terms, that's something that's so cool. And so that's kind of like the onset of how it got started. But then, just giving like informational facts about, okay, here are 4 things that are dirtier than your toilet seat, or if you're getting a hangover, this is the science behind why. And I feel like that's always how my brain works. Literally, I will Google everything. Why does this happen because of this? Or like just being very inquisitive. And so I'm like, okay, if I can make a platform where I'm helping to inform people and layman relatable terms, sometimes I have pop culture references, to reel the people in. That's something that I just had been passionate about. And another part of it too is like, I have in my bio, like redefining what a scientist looks like. Growing up, I never had a scientist or like a physics teacher, chemistry teacher that looked like me. That was like more relaxed, could chill, literally talk about, oh my gosh, this is happening on Twitter, whatever, watch reality TV, chill, whatever, but still knows, like can be really into the science, and I don't know, I just wanted to put a face to that because I had never had that experience before. So I would really say like that's why I created BB the Scientist, to have that platform and also to show this is what a scientist looks like. It's not someone that, it's not somebody that looks super professional or talks very professional all the time. And that, kind of to open up that you could do it too. I literally remember I was at an event and this one girl came up to me and she was like, "Are you BB the Scientist?" I'm like, "Stop." Yeah. She was like, "You're the reason why I like decided to major in biology," or something like that. I'm like, "Really?" I was just taken aback because sometimes you think like, okay, I'm posting these videos. Are people watching it? Are people interested in it? And so even just to hear her say like, "Yeah, you're the reason why I majored in biology," she's like, I never seen anybody like you before. That's why I did it. It just really touched my heart. And I'm like, okay, this is why I'm doing this, this is what the scientist looks like.
Yeah, I think, Briana, that's amazing, especially when I love that you've even like talked about videos of like, this is how I wear my hair. And you're really showing the power of representation. And so I think, you were talking about, I'm making these videos, but it's even in a way that you're breaking it down. I'm someone who doesn't know none about science. Like I haven't taken a chemistry class or whatever since like high school. And so for me to be able to understand certain things, like why you shouldn't wear outside clothes or things like that, that's a big deal.
Right.
Like you're literally making science trendy, but you're also making it relatable. And people are literally seeing that, wait, I can be a Black girl, I can be a woman of color, and I can be in these spaces.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's the brand.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna play a game and we're gonna move to the segment.
Yep, that's me.
Yep, that is you, girl. That is totally 100% you. Well, we're gonna move on and go to the segment. And we're gonna talk a little bit about health, and it's called "Is It Really That Deep?" And so you have the opportunity to uncover some of the pressing questions or common questions around health.
Hot off the press. Okay, let's get into it.
Alrighty. So the first one is it really that deep to choose a meatless diet to have a healthier lifestyle?
Interesting. I would say not super deep. So they have shown, there has been a link to high consumption of processed meats. So if you're eating like bacon, sausage, hot dogs, stuff like that, high processed meats, there is a link between that and colorectal and colon cancer. There is also a risk of eating red meat and colon cancer, and also like, with the heart and stuff like that, like heart disease and red meat. But I wouldn't necessarily say that, okay, just because you have a meatless diet, you're have a way lower chance of getting certain types of cancer. So I would just say it's kind of all in moderation. I guess if it's not a diet high in processed meats, a diet high in red meats, that it should be okay. So I would say not that deep, but kind of deep.
I remember mid-deep. It's mid-deep. It's middle deep. It's interesting because I remember I went vegetarian after my freshman year of college because I was like, oh, it's making me sick. Like, I don't feel good. But all I ate was pasta and pizza. And I realized, like, wait, I still feel even more sick than I did when I was eating meat. So I appreciate you saying, like, wait, you don't have to, like, cut out meat to be healthier.
Exactly.
It's all in moderation.
Right. I watched that documentary, What the Health.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have any trademark issues, but
no, it's good.
And it made me not eat red meat. It made me not eat chicken. I was just like solely pescatarian. But like you said, I was just eating a lot of pasta. Like my diet wasn't balanced. And so I think what a lot of doctors will preach is just having a balanced diet. And I feel like that can be so annoying to hear all the time. Then if you think about, people who don't have access to, being able to have balanced diets, so people who live in food deserts, so on and so forth. There's so many socioeconomic factors that come with, just being able to say, oh, you eat a balanced diet. But it really is, that's kind of the simplicity of it. Just because when you eat anything in excess, it's not the best. So I would say, like, kind of reiterating my answer, you can still eat meat, but if you're also eating like a healthy carb and a vegetable, more so cruciferous vegetables, they also have like preventative targets from cancer, like preventative measures from cancer. Cruciferous vegetables do. So I'll say a lot to say just balanced diet, but it's not that deep to eat meat.
Okay, that's good to know. Maybe I'll start eating. Maybe I'll start eating steak again.
Dabble in it.
Yeah, I'll dabble in it here
but
and there.
Not a lot.
Yeah, not too much. Not too much.
Not too much.
Alrighty, so is it really that deep to take off your outside clothes when you get back in the house?
So clothes, not so much in the deepness. I would say shoes for sure.
Really?
Yeah, your shoes are so dirty. If you think about it, I think it's like 2 to 4 times dirtier than a toilet seat. And there's thousands and thousands of colonies of bacteria on the bottom of your foot. So if you just think about, on the bottom of your shoe, if you think about everything that's on the floor that you're walking through and trudging that through your house, is not the best. So I would say it is that deep to remove your shoes if you can, just to lower your risk of getting any type of like bacterial infection, viral infection, more so bacterial infection, just because not necessarily viral, but bacterial. Just to lower your risk of that, I would definitely say it is that deep to take off your shoes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's why we have to take off our shoes here?
Yeah. So I don't allow that in my home.
Yeah. No, I ain't mad at you, girl. Okay, so is it really that deep to drink a gallon of water a day?
So to answer your question in terms of drinking a gallon of water a day, it depends. And researchers and experts, it kind of varies. Because I actually was going to make a video on this. Like, okay, should you drink a gallon of water a day? Because that's what everybody says. But it really just depends on like your body composition, your gender. It's different for different genders. And then also, there's a lot of factors that kind of go into a gallon. But I would say maybe like 8 glasses of water, which is kind of a gallon. So I would say it is that deep to make sure that you're drinking enough water. But I think a lot of people are really like gallon. I don't think it's that deep to that number. Right. But I would just say, and also like I feel like your urine is a great kind of barometer of if you are dehydrated, if you are drinking enough water. So you can kind of see that in the clarity of your urine to determine that.
Yeah.
So kind of deep, but not that deep.
Medium deep.
Yeah, medium deep.
Yeah.
Medium deep.
So something that I've always wanted to know was, is it really that deep to wear sunscreen? Because honestly, growing up, I never wore sunscreen. Like I got put on Vaseline and I was out the door. Yeah. So I'm wondering, now there's this new phenomenon of like, no, you actually do need sunscreen. Yes. So is it really that deep to wear sunscreen?
Very deep. That is like super deep. I think a lot of times, especially people of color, they think, okay, melanin, it does act as a shield for UV rays, which is so cool. And that really just has to do with evolution, not to get too deep.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Which is so cool how evolution, the science behind our skin color, we were close to the equator. Thus, we were evolved as a people to have darker skin tones that has more melanin, because what melanocytes do in the skin, they act as like a shield, as a barrier to reflect UV rays. So that's why we have coarser hair. And that is also why we have darker skin. But fast forwarding to now that we're much more educated, just because we do have an increased concentration of melanin in our skin, that doesn't protect us entirely from getting melanoma or getting other type of deficits from the sun. So I will 100% preach to wear sunscreen, because Black people can still get skin cancer, and sun like exposure is like one of the number one causes of skin cancer. Maybe not the number one, don't quote me on the number one, but it is a cause of skin cancer. And then also, just for like, vanity purposes for your skin, like wrinkles and sun damage, that's like one of the reasons why your skin can look more damaged, is because of the sun, and that can also cause wrinkles. So being able to have the SPF acts as like a barrier or as a shield, so your skin won't get as damaged. Like that's why people are always like, oh, okay, my dark spots. So if you use, SPF, or it can help prevent with either dark spots or also with like hyperpigmentation, and also with wrinkles too. SPF.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm in my SPF bag now.
Yeah.
At first, I did it within the last couple years, and I swear by Supergoop. I swear by like these other brands. So no. Okay. Thanks for letting us know.
Oh, that's deep.
It's super deep.
Yeah.
Super deep. Also, is it really that deep to get 8 hours of sleep?
It is that deep. There's a pretty deep like neuroscience as to why it's that deep. But I will say in order for, it's not necessarily 8 hours. So it can range also. It's like, from research, it's like 6 to 8 hours, 6.5 to 8 hours. So it's not necessarily 8, because sometimes I did a video about this, like when you get too much sleep, how it can kind of disrupt your circadian rhythm, and you can wake up feeling groggier than usual, especially if you like do a drastic change. Like I only get 5 hours of sleep, now I'm going to get 9 hours of sleep. It can kind of disrupt your circadian rhythm, and it will readjust, but it can make you feel groggier if you do a drastic switch like that. But I will say it is good to aim in between that 6 to 8, more so 7 to 8 range. Just there's like a whole science behind it that I'm kind of blanking on right now, but just for your brain to kind of restore properly, it is good to get that full night's sleep.
Get them Z's in.
Yeah, get them Z's in.
Yeah.
For sure. Sleepy girl.
Sleepy girls. All right. Thanks for playing. Let's talk a little bit more about your specific research, because I know it's very niche. Can you tell me something about like your findings? And also, I love that you said that you're correlating stress and mental health to the likelihood of you getting cancer. So you could just walk us through your findings?
Yes. So what's really interesting about we know during the time, so I'm more so focusing the impact of stress during a really critical developmental time window of puberty and early adulthood. So what we know about puberty, it's a really critical developmental window, and so when your body is most susceptible to insults from the environment. And what is basically known in the literature is it from your physical environment. So if you're exposed to carcinogens, synthetic estrogens, toxins during puberty, that you have a higher risk of getting breast cancer in adulthood. What isn't really super known is insults from your social environment. So that's why we're looking at the effect of chronic psychological stress during that really key critical developmental time period, and how that affects your risk of getting cancer in adulthood. So some of our findings is that there's a specific pathway that's activated when you're stressed, and your body kind of becomes, and like to say it in layman terms, out of whack. So certain pathways become super upregulated, some pathways become super downregulated. It's because a signal is being sent from your brain that's telling your body, okay, we are kind of under threat because we're stressed. And so because of that, your body is trying to overcompensate by doing other things to adapt to that stress. And so what we've seen, just in the term of like cancer biology, cancer progression, is that it's pretty well known that if you already have breast cancer and you're stressed out, that it's easier or more likely to progress and metastasize. But what we've seen is that, during this developmental time period, we use rats, which is kind of like, ugh, but it's really helpful to look at this using this model, is that it really affects the way that the breast develops, making them less developed. That we also see various pathways that have to do with like cancer progression later on in life that are upregulated, and the animals that are like subjected to stress. And so I'm not going to get too much into my thesis because we'll have to be there in April. That's crazy, April. Whoa, that's soon.
That's crazy.
To like hear our actual findings. But what I can say is that stress does have a huge impact on the way that your breasts develop, making it like we're hypothesizing that this is why, you have more aggressive subtypes later on in adulthood. And what we saw is that when we re-socialize the animals that were stressed out, okay, I'm trying to get not too much into my project. But what we saw is that that there was ways that this can be prevented by we re-socialized animals that were once subjected to stress, and we saw that there was a complete rectification in all of the detriments that the stress caused. So what I can say is that this research is a data-driven rationale for vulnerable human populations, just because we're really trying to show that, of course, cancer is multifactorial, but we're really just trying to show that there's a huge impact on one's social environment and breast cancer progression. And if you think about the people that are subjected to the most stress, this is like science and facts, that it's African American and African like Black women that are subjected to, they have the highest, they call it afternoon cortisol levels. And they also have the highest rates of the most aggressive subtypes of cancer, which is triple negative breast cancer. And so, of course, like I said, it's multifactorial. But if we can make some type of connection to why this, like what pathways are being modulated when you're experience high stress, how does that lead to more aggressive subtypes of cancer, either having more like environmental interventions, more pharmacologic interventions, more targeted treatments to kind of make this preventive, I would say. So this is more so, so like that's why I'm so passionate about my research. I could literally talk about it for hours on end because it's so multifactorial and it's so important for the next generation to come.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, what are some of the tangible things? Obviously, we don't know the cure to cancer.
Right.
But what are some of the tangible things that you can do in like your puberty, early 20s for potentially to prevent like physical health or therapy? Like, are there things that we can do to prevent that?
Yeah. So, and that's also really also multifactorial too. There's not one correct answer just because there's so many socioeconomic factors that come into that. So I can say, okay, in order to ameliorate your stress or lower your stress level, you should go to therapy and then go do a workout class, and then being able to, not have to worry about your bills or not having to worry about so many things. I feel like, especially, puberty is young, but it's still puberty and early adolescence. So it extends past there. It also depends on like the environment that you're growing up in, that you're being raised in. So there's so many factors that can go into that. And I feel like that does sound kind of not daunting, but a little like, okay, but we're trying. I feel like there's so many levels that this research can help, because it can go through like the infrastructure level, policy level, so on and so forth, to kind of try to lower stress in more vulnerable populations. So but the easy answer would be to say to, of course, get enough adequate sleep, of course, to do physical activity. If you do have, second party that you are able to speak with, second, third party, that would be awesome to just lower your stress, because there is a correlation between high stress and cancer that we're really trying to elucidate. But yeah.
And even though you said that there was like a lot of factors to it, I think just bringing awareness to it makes all of the difference, because I do notice even in my own friendship groups or even with my family, like Black women are extremely stressed out. And I've also noticed that the older generation, like my family, there's a lot of health issues with that. And so just even knowing or being aware that that's a thing is very helpful and beneficial.
Exactly. And that's why I think, that's literally why we're doing it. It's like a data-driven rationale, because there isn't a lot of research on this topic. And I think a lot of times when you're presenting things, I think especially now we're in the give me the Carfax types of things. So if we're actually able to use our model, show scientifically what is happening, it's a data-driven rationale, like I said, for vulnerable human populations. So we're kind of at the start. So it's like, once we have this, okay, have your way in like being able to implement some strategies to alleviate stress, but we're kind of at the bottom, which will just help to build on top of, which is the goal.
So you're in your 5th year. You're about to graduate soon. I know. I'm wondering what's next. I love when you said earlier that you were able to cling to your faith in God. You were wondering like what's next, and kind of through the uncertainty, you were able to find your path. And you said you're kind of in a similar state right now. So I'm wondering what's next for BB the Scientist, or do you know? And if so, like, can you talk about some of the steps that you're taking?
Yes. So I'm kind of back in that era of like, what's next? What's next? I think this time around, and it's kind of crazy to think about where you were 5 years ago and where you are now, I feel a lot more confident in myself, confident in my abilities, and confident in God, to help lead me into those next steps. I would say professionally, I'm still working on that. I think I would want to go either into like the biotech space or pharma, but I would say like I'm more so focused on like personally, and I would say definitely it's to keep on building my brand and like creating a bigger platform, just because I want to, I don't know, I feel like that's my purpose.
I appreciate how you were like honestly getting more confident in God, because I think the more you experience, I think the more you're like, wait a second.
Right.
Like when I was able to look back and see like all he has done and how he's really ordered my steps, I think that makes the world of a difference.
Right.
I'm wondering, like, if you could look back 5 years ago, what is something that you would tell yourself, your younger self?
Right. Girl, chill. I would literally tell it like, girl, relax. Stop going on social media as much and comparing yourself, I would say. Yeah, I would say just relax. Because I feel like I've always been a very overzealous, like, okay, I have to do this, just to make myself feel better. And I feel like maturing is kind of letting that mindset go a little bit and being able to be proactive, yes, but then also to kind of trust the process. That sounds so cliche, but especially like having faith in God, but also having faith in myself, and really am like in this time just trusting the process and allowing God to speak and work through me. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm so passionate about my page and like the platform that I'm trying to build and create, because I know it's not for me. It's for people to be inspired, it's for people to learn, it's for people to feel like have relatability, you know what I mean? And so I would just say to myself, my old self, my 5 years ago self, like, girl, chill. You're only 23, which is kind of crazy. And like, not even to stick to an age, but it's just like, relax. Like, you have so much life to learn and live and learn, but chill.
Yeah.
More so.
Yeah. And that's something I need to constantly remind myself too, because I do think, I remember when I turned 25, I was like, oh, life is over. Like, I should have everything figured out. But I think you realize, like, wait, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
And I think just being in school, going to college, or just honestly being a person of color, there's just this expectation to keep thriving and to keep elevating. And I think remembering to be in the present and to focus on where you are now, I think is really pivotal and important. So my last question for you is, how can we support you? How can we follow you? What are some of the platforms that you're on?
But I just wanted to make one more point to the last question, because I just thought about that. And also, I think one thing I would also reiterate to my old self is, look how far you've come. Look what you've done thus far. There's literally a shirt that says, like, you're your ancestors' dreams, or whatever, like, you're living your ancestors' wildest dreams. And so it's just like thinking about the things I've been able to experience and the things that I've done thus far. It's just like, it's okay, you know, that you can relax in that aspect and like find hope and joy in that. Sorry, so that going back to that, but yeah, you can support me by following my Instagram, BB the Scientist. I post on there different, answers to various questions. So I'm going to post a video about, like, okay, why is cancer rates rising in younger people? Why do you get the itis? When you lose weight, where does fat go? That was one I had no idea about. Like, I didn't know that when you're losing weight, you breathe out the fat. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when you're losing weight, you breathe it out. I know, right? No, literally, that's what people were saying in the comments. Like, okay, let me just breathe really fast. But yeah, so you can definitely go there. I also do like relatable content, like a day in the life of a PhD candidate. I try to give steps as to, if you want to do a PhD, what you can do for that. So yeah, I would say follow me on that platform, Instagram and TikTok.
Dang, Briana, I'm so proud of you. You're literally being the change that you want to see. And it's just amazing to see how you've evolved from college to now. And I just can't wait to see where you go from there.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so proud of you too. Honestly, you're living out your purpose too. I'm really proud of you for doing this podcast, conceptualizing it and then really putting it into action. So big things for you too, sis.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And I just appreciate you and love you so much.
Love you too.